Lesson 3.3 is subtracting integers. The objective is to understand conceptually how to subtract integers. When you subtract 7, the result is the same thing as adding its additive inverse, negative 7. So let's look at a problem. If we take 10 minus 7, we get 3 as our answer. And we learned while watching lesson 3.2 that if we take 10 plus negative 7, if I can make the negative sign, plus negative 7 is also 3. So what this is saying is that subtracting and adding a negative are very, very similar processes. You get the same result in the end. So the way that I teach this to cause you less work is that all you have to do is add the opposite. And then once you've added the opposite, subtracting is literally just like adding integers. So here I have 6 minus 12. If I add the opposite, so if I change it to addition, so I have 6 plus, this was a positive 12, so I make it a negative 12. I now have 6 plus negative 12. I added the opposite. Here I have negative 20 minus 15. I add its opposite. So I now have negative 20 plus negative 15. Here I have negative 22 minus 26. I add the opposite, and I get negative 22 plus negative 26. D, I have 4 minus a negative 12. So I change it to addition first, then I add the opposite. This was a negative 12, so it becomes a positive 12. So I have 4 plus 12. Negative 15 minus negative 5. I add the opposite, so it becomes plus adding the opposite. So it becomes negative 15 plus 5. F, I add the opposite, so it becomes plus a positive 6. So it's 18 plus 6. Adding the opposite is something you will be doing. If this last 50 seconds or minute did not make sense to you, watch it again. If it still doesn't make sense to you, let's talk about it tomorrow, because adding the opposite is literally something you will do all year long. Every time you see a subtraction problem, you add the opposite, and it makes everything make more sense. Example 1, subtracting basic integers. So the first thing we do, we just learned how to do it, is we add the opposite. And I still have my pink pen on. So we're going to pull out our number cube. So we have positive 8 plus a negative 3. So we pull out our negative 3 number cubes here. So if we remember, it erased when I clicked my button, but we had 8 plus negative 3. So that's what we've demonstrated with our counters. So we cross off one of the positive and one of the negative cancel out. One of the positive and one of the negative cancel out. One of the positive and one of the negative cancel out. And you're left with positive 5. Here we're going to use a graph to help us. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the opposite. So we have 2 plus negative 15. So we start at positive 2, and then we add a negative 15. So we're going to go left 15. We're going to go 1. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And we go until we get to negative 13 is our answer. This number line being negative 10 to 10 was not long enough. So this is where you have to learn how to do it without a graph. 2a, we have negative 10 minus 7. So when I add the opposite, that becomes plus a negative 7. So I have negative 10 counters over here. So I'm going to do 1, 2, move that 1 minute pie. And then I have negative 7 over here. Now, do any of these cancel out? They do not. So we look at how many counters do we have left total, and that is negative 17 counters that we have left. So that is our answer, is negative 17. 2b, I have negative 13 minus 8, so I add the opposite. So now I have negative 13 plus negative 8. If you remember, when we have the same sign, we add their absolute values. So I have 13, it's supposed to be a 3, 13 plus 8. Thirteen plus 8 is 21. And since they're both negative, it's going to be a negative 21. Here we have 1 minus negative 2. So we add the opposite. So we have 1 plus, opposite of negative 2 is a positive. So now we have 1 plus 2. So to do that with tiles, which most of us probably don't need tiles to do that problem, but let's do it. We have 1 plus 2. How many counters do we have left? We have 3. So our answer is a positive 3. We have 12 minus negative 6. So we add the opposite. We change it to addition, and we change it to the opposite. So it's 12 plus a positive 6. So 12 plus 6, we know how to do that. That gives us 18. Or you could look at, you're adding the absolute value, and since they're both positive, it's a positive answer, and that is 18. Here we have negative 10 minus a negative 7. So we add the opposite so that it becomes negative 10 plus a positive 7. And we use our counters to pull out negative 10. And then a positive 7 was what that was changed to. And then we go through and we find pairs that cancel each other out. So this negative and this positive, this negative and this positive and this negative, this negative and this positive, negative and positive cancel, negative and positive cancel, negative and positive cancel, and we are left with negative 3. Here I have negative 21 minus 8. So I add the opposite, so I make it plus a negative 8. So I have negative 21 plus negative 8. So when they're the same sign, I add their absolute values. So I take 21 plus 8, and I get 29. And since they're both negative, my answer is going to be a negative 29. Okay, remember that these questions down here are for when you're stuck and you just don't know what to do, they will help you. So what integer should replace x in the expression above? And that is x equals negative 6. So we're going to rewrite x minus y, but we're going to plug in negative 6 for x. And then it's minus. Which integer should replace y in the expression? That's -5. So we have -6 minus a -5. And we add the opposite. So we now have -6 plus 5. And they are different. When we have different signs, we take their absolute value and we find the difference between them. So 6 minus 5 is 1. And which one has a greater absolute value, -6 or 5? And the one that has a greater absolute value is -6. So that means our answer is going to be negative. So we have -1 as an answer. Okay, we're going to evaluate m minus n. If m is equal to -15 and n is equal to 8. So we're going to plug that in for m. We're going to plug -15 in for m. So we have -15 minus n is a +8. So we add the opposite and we have -15 plus -8. So when they're the same sign, we add their absolute values. So we have 15 plus 8, which is 23. And they are both negative, so our answer will be negative, and we get a -23. And again, these are questions that you might ask yourself to help you. What integer should replace m in the expression? What integer should replace n in the expression to create this problem? Example 6, subtracting integers in the real world. So the temperatures on the moon vary from -173 degrees Celsius to 127 degrees Celsius. We're going to find the difference between the maximum and minimum. So we're finding the difference between the maximum and minimum. These are keywords here. So the maximum is 127. And we're finding the difference between the maximum and the minimum. The minimum is a -173. So to find the, when we're subtracting with negative numbers, we add the opposite and we get 127 plus 173. And that gives me 300 degrees Celsius. So the difference of temperatures on the moon is 300 degrees Celsius. Last problem for tonight. Brenda had a balance of -$52 in her account. The bank charged her a fee of $10 for having a negative balance. What is her new balance? So she has -$52 in her account, and they charged her. That's a bad thing, so they subtracted $10 from her account. So we add the opposite, and we have -52 plus -10, which gives us -$62 is her account balance now.